Today we're going to be talking about the album New Mexico by Anchor Braille, aka Stephen Christian, aka lead vocalist with Anberlin. This album came out several weeks ago and I listened through it and was left flabbergasted and pleasantly surprised by what we find. In fact, there was so much to it that I was fascinated with that I really wanted to talk to Stephen. So I reached out and set up a time. Here's my conversation with Stephen Christian, aka Anchor Braille. We are sitting here with, should I say Reverend Stephen Christian or just Mr. or yeah. Oh, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah. We're going to be talking about your new album under the Anchor Braille project. I personally just wanted to tell you first that I grew up listening to just a ton of Anberlin, and then when Anchor Braille hit, I listened to a ton of that all of the time. And Anberlin was a lot of the reason I learned guitar and wanted to start writing. And then when Anchor Braille stuff hit, I was like, I think about it all the time, even when I'm writing now. So your music and a lot of what you've done has just like made a huge impact on me. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sitting down and talking about it with me.
Yeah, Jonathan, I'm excited, man. Thank you so much for having me.
I listened through the new album multiple times, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I kind of want to start with why this album happened now.
I moved to New Mexico in 2015, right after Anberlin kind of professionally dissolved. I had watched a documentary about some 80s and 90s bands, and one of the lead singers in there, when he quit the band, he like disappeared. He actually was in a huge band, and he disappeared. He became a forest ranger.
Oh, nice.
And I thought, that is the coolest way to just leave life.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To get out. And I always admired that. I thought that was the coolest thing. And so when the opportunity to go to New Mexico kind of presented itself, it almost seemed natural in the art, in the caricature of the book that I, in my mind that I'm writing. When we moved there, we only intended to move there for about a year. And instead, we lived there for almost 5. That place, it's called the Land of Enchantment. And there's a reason. It's just beautiful and scenic. And it's the closest to a wilderness I've ever come. And it was mystical and spiritual and just all the adjectives that you can conjure. That place is just, it is all that I hoped it would be and more. It's one of those places that I know I'll be back, whether that's to live or die or something. I'm going to be back. It's so ingrained in who I am. And I got to rid myself a lot of who I was prior to 2015. I think that with being in a band comes a lot of ego, whether you want it or not. I think a lot of identity is wrapped up in being a musician and being in a band. Especially the more success that you get, I think the more identity that that accumulated, you become entwined. You are Stephen from Anberlin. You are, this from this, and that's how you are on people's phones. That's how people, address you. And so it was really a purification process. And in that time, it was really incredible just to a lot of self-awareness, a lot of self-exploration and everything from, again, ridding the ego to being married. The fact of the matter is the first 7 years of my marriage was on the road, and you are really presenting the best version of yourself to that person. When you come home, it's a celebration, and you go on your vacations, and it's just fun. And then, to instantaneously like, whoa, man, I got a wife. I'm waking up every day. This is great.
Totally.
It was just a learning process. I think all of that kind of follows you. And so that's kind of where the inspiration came from, is kind of writing down all those years, those 5 years, that parenthesis of time, kind of translating it into, where I am now. And then coming to Chad, my producer that I've worked with for years now, and just kind of like spitting out my grand vision of, I said it's Little Yachty meets Red Dead Redemption 2.
Oh, yeah, I love that.
So those are my big that's my inspiration page of just, because he had some songs that he came out with that I was just like, oh man, this is creatively, I feel liberated to now kind of release this. I feel like we just kind of came up with our own genre. It's like gospel mariachi indie spaghetti western rock.
Oh man, spaghetti western is the exact term I actually used when I was talking to my wife about the album the first time. Told her, I was like, this album is so fascinating because I can't quite figure out what it is as a genre,
Yes.
but I love it when an album feels that way, because it does feel like a lot of albums now, you kind of end up listening to them and you're like, yeah, it's pretty standard all the way through. Where this one, you're starting with a narration, and then you're going into like cowbell just going crazy in the background of the next, it was so fascinating. And that kind of answered part of my question, which was like, how clear of a vision did you have of the production going in? Which it kind of sounds like y'all formulated it as it was happening. But did it still like surprise you though?
Yo, yeah. I mean, we were very intentional. I mean, think about the narration.
Yeah.
That's my dad, and
I was I was gonna ask, man. I was like, who is it?
that's my dad, and he grew up on Roy Rogers and all
Yeah.
that. Get me into that when I was a kid. I was like, no way, I am not going to watch the Lone Ranger.
You're like the rifleman again,
Wow, this is Bonanza.
Yeah,
Really?
yeah.
So I knew that he would be way into it, and I just said, Dad, give me that son. He does not talk like that at all, but he got into his voice acting ability, and then even something as simple as like the cowbell. I mean, that was even intentional. Like everything is like layered. Like what is this world creating?
Yeah.
Would a cowbell be in this world? Well, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's gonna be a
totally.
cowbell. That's just going to happen, and so we were very intentional. But I will tell you, this is the most fun I've had on a project ever. And I think it's very liberating in the fact that I told the record label flat out, like, I'm not touring.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do a festival maybe, but I'm telling you, like, I'm going to try to, I do not want to tour. And so they were, there wasn't an expectation like, oh no, you got to sell 500,000 records or you're dropped. It has to sound like this. You got to do this. They were very much like, whatever.
That's awesome.
Have a great time.
That's amazing.
And then this the direction again, like kind of Western indie. There was no limits because I've never heard. I tried to find Western indie rock, and there's. And I'm not saying, oh, I'm unique and I'm original and nobody else is. No, I'm sure there is. I just couldn't find it.
Totally.
Listening to a lot of like alt country lately and outlaw radio and so it's been really fun to like create without any parameters.
Yeah.
Not that Anberlin was like this box, but in a way you kind of had to stay inside certain parameters that that the fans were craving.
Yeah.
The record label was looking for.
It's more weight sitting behind like every decision when you're under that much pressure, because you're thinking, well, first of all, like I've got to survive a tour, so I have to enjoy it. But then how do I enjoy it and make something that is, different this time, while having all the pressure of all these other people I've got to pay? And I mean, like you said, it's not quite in a box, but you're kind of corralled, to go with a Western term for us.
Yeah, so we had so much fun, man. I mean, everything. I wanted a whistle in there. I wanted to.
Dude,
I've never
yeah.
whistled, and I thought this is it. Some of the trumpets in there are actually my voice. I'm pretending to be a trumpet.
Nice.
And so we were just. I mean, the whole thing was so fun and funny, and we did a lot more. And he had to like calm it down.
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
like,
well, what's something that got the axe that you were like, it's too much, like we've got to calm it down? Like, do you remember something in particular?
I kind of wanted a bar scene in the first song. I wanted like a lot of like chaos, and as if somebody like kicked the doors of the saloon and they were singing the song. And he was just like, bro, we can do so much, but for instance, in the first song, Sweet Jesus, I wanted it like Elvis Costello punk rock. Dude, gang vocals.
I wrote Elvis Costello down because I felt that a little bit there too. That's awesome.
Absolutely. And I wanted it to just be like gang vocals, and it was and he made me do gang vocals with myself, and then polished it and put one reel behind I was like, bro, no, that's not what I want. And that was, so what you hear is our first take. It was me
awesome.
and Chad going at it, talking during the whole thing, and he was like, no, that's too chaos. Why am I on the record? Why are we doing this? And I was like, no, I want the original first take. Like, let's start out the record as raw.
Yeah.
And I love it because it's like, the verses are so grimy, and then the chorus just lifts, and you're just like, oh, I feel it. I feel, oh, I'm back in, chaos. And
I felt like it just set the tone really well for the album. It was so fascinating for me because, again, I've listened through each of the Anchor and Braille albums, and I'll bring those up a little bit here too, but it was an immediately different scenario when that song hit, because I was like, this doesn't feel like Anchor and Braille. It doesn't feel like Anberlin. I was like, this is completely in its own space. And the way that song moved and changed, and then the chorus, like you said, kind of lifts back up, it's almost like this tension relief, because it's so hard and so fast and so tense during those verses. And then you get this like really sweet chorus with like this awesome melody. So this is kind of a greedy question, okay? So like my favorite song on the album is The Weight of 1917. And so I want to know a little bit. I feel like it's a random song to pick, but like I keep going back to it repeatedly, and it's one of those that like it's made it on multiple playlists of mine now, and it'll come on, and it's something about the way the guitar kind of floats in, the way the drums come in, and things like that. So greedily, I want to know a little bit more about that song. So.
I had a catharsis one day where it kind of it has to dawn on a lot of us men that, we could have all died on foreign soil in someone else's war,
Totally.
And that's a weird thing to think about. Like, dude, if we were like 19 and got drafted, we had dreams and hopes and aspirations, and we wanted kids, and we wanted a wife, and we wanted all these, we just had a lust for life. And then the government was like, no, you're going to go fight in World War I. You're going to go do this. And that's got to be weird to die on foreign soil, like be dying on a foreign soil and just think like, what was this?
Yeah.
Why did I do this? Like, what was this for? I didn't start this war. This has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
And so I just put myself into that character, just pining for an imaginary relationship back home,
Yeah.
Maybe it was just starting. They just met, and they're both sad, and he's leaving off to war, and just kind of wishing like, I just want one more morning. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, life is so short at like 8 to die in a foreign soil at 18, 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just a made up scenario in which, a lot of people don't realize the Victorian era, when you see all those Victorian outfits and the big wigs, that's at the same time as cowboys and Texas cattle rap. People think like, no, that happened so far apart. No, that was the same exact time. And so I pretended like, here's this cattle ranch kid, now he's going to fight a war that nobody really knows why World War I started. Franz Ferdinand assassinated. Why that triggered, this war machine and millions and millions and millions of people dying people are just like, wait, why are we doing
they're
this
like,
again?
we don't know what happened. Yeah.
It was the war of wars. It was supposed to end the war, to end all wars. And actually, it just started world wars.
It brought in a new era of war.
A new era of why are we creating all these war factories if we're not going to use them? So let's use them. Let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
So I just kind of made up a scenario in which, this guy is now drafted. He's going to World War I, doesn't know why, so confused, would rather be home, back at the farm or the ranch, and pining for a love that he never acquired.
I had picked up that it was focused around war and kind of this journey, right? But I had thought about an uncle that he's since passed away, but he was a Vietnam vet, and he got drafted when he was 18 years old and never spent the night away from home. And you think about scenarios like that, and you're like, man, like he just left and went to like foreign soil, and like the thought process of this whole thing has just happened to him. And when you're 18, you feel like an adult, but then once you're well past 18, you're like, hey, like that's a kid, dude. That's crazy.
That is a kid.
So it's really kind of fascinating. But I was also kind of wondering, listening to the lyrics, like, did you feel like that connected to kind of your moving to not foreign soil, but like moving to an uncharted area as well?
I mean, it was a both and. I think that the mind kind of like the overflow of the heart, so the mouth sings.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
totally.
saying? Lyrics are kind of like, talking about, obviously a war and battle and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that was a tumultuous time, being out there in New Mexico. Well, not all the whole time, but a lot of it, was
Yeah.
just, again, the war against self. You're just, trying to figure things out. So I think that, with that is the subconscious, like, I'm dealing with battles right here in the conscious. And I think the subconscious was like, attributing it to war. So
Yeah.
I can't say I perfectly sat down and tried to do a duplistic,
Yeah.
but I would say upon reflecting, I see the parallels in so many different ways.
Yeah. It's kind of like one of those things where you write a song and you're like, oh, I didn't even know that my mind would float there that way. But it's just kind of the mindset you're in. That's super fascinating. Now, with kind of, again, previous work, each of your Anchor and Braille albums have been, in my opinion, like very individual to themselves. Is that something that you like sit down and you think, okay, this is like an album and it is this sound specifically? Or is it just kind of like whatever you're listening to and it combines? Like, does that question make sense in this?
Absolutely. I think it's a both and scenario. Like I do want an individual. I do want, because Anchor and Braille was never supposed to make it. We're not supposed
Right.
it wasn't supposed to be like, oh, this is going to be how I provide for my family. This is just straight passion.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm musically, I'm the luckiest man in the entire universe. Like my gosh, man, I put out 2 records with my punk rock band. I put out, minimum 7 with Anberlin, depending on what you're counting in B-sides, and 8 with this new one. I put out 5 with Anchor and Braille. That's insane. I put out 2 with my worship project.
Yep.
I feel like I hit the musical lottery. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
a lot of bands, garage bands, let's start a project, and then they go to a studio and put out an EP.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Maybe someone gives them a shot and puts out 1 record, but bro, I have 5 records on a side project. That's insane to me.
Yeah.
Like, I can't even believe it. So, and I tell every label, I'm like, I'm not going to push this record.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do a lot. And they're like, no, it's been working in the past. So, go.
Like, whatever, man. Just like, I don't know, just do it.
Okay, I'll keep writing if you're going to keep putting it out.
Yeah.
So I just feel, man, unbelievably lucky in that area. And so each record is very much individualistic, like from album 1 to 2, there's growth and changes. And
Yeah.
it is definitely, some of it is like influence to what I'm listening to, but also kind of what I'm experiencing.
Yeah.
And then I love, working with different producers. I've worked with Aaron Marsh, I've worked with Micah Talks, I've worked with Chad, obviously. And so each one kind of gives me a different kind of like, here, try this. Here, what
Totally.
about this? And so I usually come with like, lyrics, melodies, and some 4 chords.
Yeah.
And then just cast vision. And then they go, all right, well, let's get this player. And then I get this player. And then they get this player. And then it all just kind of like,
That's awesome.
builds into, and it's so cool in the fact that like I can go back and listen to these records, and it even takes me back to a time period and a moment and a producer.
Yeah.
And I know where these lyrics came out of, and I know it's it's like a photo album.
Yeah.
For other people. Well, I can go back and say, well, here's exactly what I was feeling. Here's the people that I was encountering. This is about this person or this situation.
I love to write music, and like I've been fortunate enough to play like a few shows here and there, but the thing is that it's definitely not my career, give or take. But I've talked about this a lot with my wife. Writing and music and creativity, it kind of gets to a point where it feels like compulsion, where you almost don't know you don't know what to do if you're not doing it. So at least that's how it's always felt for me. And it's funny because I can go back and listen to some of the things I've written or songs that I've produced with friends, and it takes me immediately back to the things that I was either going through or the things that had been really happy in life or sad in life. And it just kind of travels with you as you move through life and move forward. So, but I mean, a lot of the albums you have written also are connected to stages of my life at this point too, which is kind of crazy. And I mean, for example, like The Quiet Life, when I hear that album, I think about my time when I was like in Liberty University and like visiting friends and going to shows and doing all this. Like we just wore that album out. But it's just fascinating to me how it connects in that way. In a few years, like down the road, kind of what do you want this album to kind of speak to as far as you as a person? And then do you feel like this genre and this style was like a one-stop, or are you like, I could see myself sticking around with it in the future years down the road?
Yeah, in a few years when I look back, I think this is going to be one of the albums, if not the album that I'm most proud of, because it was so intentional. It was so purposeful. I really enjoy the songs. I genuinely enjoy, like Rattlesnakes is like one of my favorite songs I've ever written.
It's awesome.
And I pitched it to Anberlin, and they were like, it's a little punk rock for us. And I was like, come on.
A little too spaghetti western is what I heard they said.
Yes, exactly. And they, they were just like, lyrically and stuff like, I'm like, fine. Because, anything that Anberlin, anything I write, everything I write, it goes to Anberlin first. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you want it? You can have it. First right of refusal. Going back to the question, it's something I'm going to be absolutely proud of. And this is one of those records, like when my grandchildren said, Dad, Grandpa, you were a musician. I'm going to pull this out and be like, listen to this. This is your great grandfather singing or speaking here. This is your grandma like singing with me.
Oh man, yeah.
These are my friends that are playing on this record. This was a monumental time in my life. One of the greatest times in my life, being in New Mexico. So it's so layered, and nothing against records like Vital. I think there were some great Anberlin songs off Vital. Great. If we had a greatest hits, I would put some of, but I don't know that life. That life was a bus. You know what I'm saying? I was spending 8-9 months on a bus. There's nothing I can go back and be like, oh, this parenthesis of time, this is how I was feeling, or I can't give you a substantial like weight. You can't feel anything from my autobiography in that moment. There was nothing. Life was very cyclical. But this one is like, I can tell you of a 5-year time period of my life that this is a chunk. And let me tell you some great memories about riding horses in the morning to breakfast with the kids, with my daughters just sitting in front of me, and I'm, so those are awesome moments.
Wow.
So, but as far as like, is this, I don't know. I don't know if I will ever put out another record again.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like I'm against. I am pro Anberlin, like whatever they want in the future. I think Maddie's doing an exceptional job. I am so happy. Everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Like, at this point in my musical, life, I just want to make sure everybody's content.
Yeah.
Your kids fed, and do you have a smile on your face?
Yeah.
That's what I care about now. And so it just feels like Anberlin is really content. It feels like they're putting food on the table.
Yeah.
So I don't want to mess with Maddie. I don't want to mess with Anberlin.
Yeah.
We're all great friends.
That's
I'm
awesome.
playing a show in a couple weeks here in Alabama. So everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And so that being said, I mean, am I on the next Anberlin record? I don't want to say I don't care in the fact that I'm nonchalant, but I want to do what's the best. What serves those 5 individuals the greatest, and I want to do that.
Totally.
And so, and is Anchor Braille going to put out another record? I have no clue, man. I don't know. So I can't really predict musically what's next. But I do feel like, and if I had to guess, the next Anchor and Braille record, I think it would be a very, very stripped down nothing. Like I'll call it, I may name the album Minimalist. Like, I want just me and a guitar or me and the piano.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the, that's what I feel in my heart.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? That's where I am musically. That's what I, when I sit down and I write something on guitar lately or piano, I don't hear like I used to hear. You'll think I'm crazy, but I used to hear Russian orchestras in my head, and layers, and I could hear this massive choir and productions and sounds and what if this, and my mind would just go to like, okay, I can see myself on a massive stage, and there's 10 people and they're singing this song, and now it's more kind of like me in like a coffee shop bar with 7 people, and 2 of them know who I am, and one of those 2 people are my wife.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like,
totally.
That's the stage in which my head is playing.
Yeah.
The music that I'm writing. And so I can't predict the future, but I will say, like, and maybe I'll add in some of those elements where it's a little more storytelling, like country, like Off New Mexico, that record. I can see that, but I really don't know what tomorrow holds.
Man, I'll hit you with one more question. I like to ask people really a specific question when I get the chance, very specific things. So I'll ask you, what is your connection with the restaurant First Watch? And why are you still mad at Anthony Russo for standing you up for lunch that one day?
Did you see that I have a First Watch cup in my hand?
That's crazy. I did not notice that.
That is hilarious.
Yeah, it was his birthday. You could have...
Listen, then why wouldn't he just say no? Why would he just say...
I don't know. I was FaceTiming him this morning, and I was trying to understand it, but he's so difficult, That's what...
Well, he's so high maintenance. He's now that he's got his own card game and devotional. He thinks
just because I can go to a Barnes and Noble and find his card game, he can just not show up for lunch. He's gonna be mad I'm not taking his side in this, but
Yeah, no, he stood me up. I mean, I'm there. It's 8:15. I'm sitting by myself, and I'm like, bro, do you know who I used to be?
Yeah, that's. He said that when he brought it up, you were like, do you know who I am? No, he. Dude, Anthony's the best. He's the greatest. And I was in a group chat with him, and we were just talking, and I was like, I'm going to be talking to Stephen Christian from Anchor Braille and Anberlin. And he's like, oh, I know him. And I said, I've got to talk to you like right now about, I need something. So.
I love that's funny. This morning, my wife's like, "You want to go to breakfast?" I'm like, yeah, where? And she's like, "First Watch." So
guess what? He's probably still wasn't there because he's camping right now.
He wasn't there. He wasn't there. I looked around. He wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, I really do appreciate you doing this, and again, thanks for the music. Thanks for continuing to write. And if there's another album, I'll be listening to it. And if there's not, I'll just keep going back to all of this, but I appreciate you. Thank you.
You got it, man. Have a great day. Thanks so much.
So as you can tell by that conversation, I really like this album. I liked it a lot before I even got to talk with Stephen about it. It's always the hardest to put a rating to an album that you really, really enjoy, because you think a 10 is like a perfect album. Do I go all the way up to that? I think in my heart, I go up to a 10, but I'm gonna play a 9 or a 9.5 to stay safe. I truly enjoy this album. I think it's beautiful. I think the concepts around it are fascinating and beautiful as well. And the conversation with Stephen just solidified that I truly do think it's one of the best albums we've gotten from him. Thanks everyone for watching. If you want to see my reviews early, go over to Music Board, and the next video out, I'm listening to nothing but Switchfoot and ranking all of it. Bye.